Do you have a pet? I have a golden retriever. I also previously had a cat and a lab. I love animals. I don't know if you have a pet, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, my guest today, Dr. Judy Morgan, is fantastic. She is going to tell us how we look at the pulse, the tongue, yes, on animals. How do we acupuncture? Do they have the same meridian? Does a dolphin have the same meridian as a dog and a cat? Do they have the same points? And how do we feed them? We're going to talk about nutrition for your pet. So if you do have a pet, you're going to learn a lot. Also, your pet personality. What 5 element personality are they? I love this conversation, and you are going to love Dr. Morgan. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome to the AcuPro show, Dr. Judy Morgan. I am so excited. Your team reached out for you to come on the show because I love animals, and you are a very well and very experienced veterinarian, but you also do holistic medicine for pets, specifically acupuncture. We're going to talk about Chinese medicine and acupuncture for pets. So before I introduce you completely, welcome to the show, Dr. Morgan.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to reach your audience. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. You've been practicing veterinarian medicine for a long, long time. And you also are an educator. You have like 8 books. You are very passionate about helping the animals with holistic method, including looking at the root cause and seeing if we can change their food or the nutrition. So nutrition or food therapy, including acupuncture. I know you do chiropractic adjustment as well for your fur babies. You've spoken, you have so many awards. I don't even want to go there because you're like the award woman. I was looking at your biography and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And you have a whole line for pets, natural healthy pets, that we'll have the link in the show note for people to check out. But before we go any further, anything that you would like to add that I forgot that you are the queen of?
Well, I have dabbled in a lot of different alternative modalities. And it was really when I took my first acupuncture course that I said, oh, I think I found my home. And it's really interesting because every holistic veterinarian that I know, they find that one thing. Like I have a friend, all she does is essential oils. She's called the oily vet. That just hit her hot button. I have other friends who are homeopaths, and I have other friends who are just into Reiki or energy therapies. When I found acupuncture, I said, oh, this is really cool. But actually, there are 4 branches of Chinese medicine, and the one that really hit my hot button was the food therapy. I've written quite a few cookbooks using Chinese veterinary medicine food therapy because in my practices, I could heal so many animals, get them off medications, heal their chronic diseases by changing what was in their bowl and then also adding in acupuncture, chiropractic, laser therapy, whatever else I needed to do to get them over that hump. But for me, the food was so incredibly powerful. And then if it wasn't quite enough, we throw some herbs in there because the herbs are sort of like super concentrated food. So for me, it just became my niche. And really, the food therapy, I've lectured all over the world on that. I have courses on that. And I like to teach people how to figure that out. We on our website we have a pet personality quiz so you can figure out which Chinese element your animal is, which is very similar to people. We also have a human personality quiz. The human personality quiz goes a lot more into emotion because we can figure that out a little better than we can with our animals. But once you have their element, then you can design their diet and their acupuncture, which I'm not in practice anymore, so I don't do that. But I can still design diets for just about anybody, and it works on people too. So that's what's so cool because now I know my personality. I am a very strong wood personality, which means my poor metal element is struggling all the time to keep up with chopping down that wood tree that's out of control. So, but I've learned over the years, hey, we better feed that metal element and keep it strong. Otherwise, that wood is out of control and life just gets really ugly.
Oh my God, there's so much to unpack in there. First of all, thank you for sharing because I am such a proponent for food as medicine. And in Chinese medicine, zhong qi, or the middle qi, is basically the center of our health, which is spleen and stomach, which is the digestive system. And it literally will feed our mind, our spirit, and our body physically. So that's something that people still have a hard time with. And they're like, okay, well, acupuncture is going to help me. Yeah, sure. But diet is a huge component, because this is what you can do to help your body heal faster, right? So I'm so glad you're passionate about food therapy. That's the first thing. Before we go and talk about that and the 5 elements and how you make people take a quiz so we can figure out what elements they are, which I love. So it's interesting because I'm half wood, half earth. So before we go into this, I just want to share a quick story. When I was younger, I'm a very sensitive person because I have a lot of earth into me. And so I'm an empath. When I was younger, I still do, loved animals, any kind of animals. I'd be the little kid that would walk on the street and say to my mom, don't step there, there's an ant, you could have killed her. And my mom's like, it's an ant, it's an ant. And I'm like, no, watch where you're stepping. And as I grew, I'm still that person. And I remember wanting to learn to be a vet when I was much younger, like in my late teens, because I thought, oh my God, then I can help all the animals. The problem was, I'm too much of an empath. And I remember going to a vet and spending a day, and it was a disaster. Like, I cried so hard. I was so upset for those poor animals that were suffering. And because I've had, dogs in my life, I have a golden right now named Boomer, who's full of energy. If he's hurt, if he's not feeling well, my heart is just so hard. And I don't know if it's because they can't communicate and tell me, like, this is what's happening, this is where I'm hurting, or this is what's going on. I don't know, but I thought, I can't go to veterinarian school. There's no way I could do that. So I just wanted to share that story with you, because I always think, thank you for all the people that went into this medicine to help all our fur babies. Because I know you don't practice acupuncture anymore, but I have a few questions on that. So there are different animals. When you went to acupuncture school, because I know a lot of my audience would probably want to know this too, there are mammals, there's birds, there's lots of different kind of animals, obviously. Do they all have the same meridians? Did you focus on mostly pets like dogs and cats, or mammals? How does that work when it comes to how many meridians they have? Are they different from different animals? Tell me all about that.
It's actually all the same. The meridians are the same, the points are the same. We might have to look a little harder to find them. I did a lot of equine acupuncture horses. And so literally they have one toe that we look at, the big hoof that they stand on. But if we look at the evolution of the horse and we go way back to the Eohippus and all the, miniature horses that were running around in prehistoric eras, they actually had 5 toes. And they've just moved over time and shrunk up. So literally they're walking on their middle finger. So the points are all there. And it's really interesting. As part of my acupuncture training, I went to China for 2 weeks for a worldwide conference. And so we had a lot of people lecturing, a lot of labs and different things. And there was a veterinarian there. She's actually from the States, but she had mapped all the points on dolphins, because she did a lot of dolphin medicine. And so she would get in the tanks with the dolphins and do acupuncture on the dolphins. It was the coolest lecture. I was like, I am never going to do that. But it was just really cool because, they've got a flipper and a dorsal fin and a tail. So you would think, okay, these points are not there. Now, obviously, things are compressed if we have shorter limbs, that sort of thing. But they're all there, and it all can be mapped very similarly. So the acupuncture is about the same. Horses, we use bigger needles,
Yep.
longer needles. We got to get in a little deeper in some of the points. But I have done acupuncture on birds, rabbits, cats, dogs, horses, and it's cool in whatever species you do. And animals are so amazing with alternative, because like you said, animals can't communicate, they can't talk, but they communicate really, really, really well. When I was first introduced to acupuncture in horses, one of my ponies had something, my daughter's show pony had something called moon blindness. It's a recurrent uveitis. So they get inflammation in their eyes and they go blind. And so some days she could see and some days she couldn't see. So when she was having a flare up and she had a lot of inflammation, she was blind. So one morning I go out in the barn and the pony can't see, and I'm like, ah. And I called an equine friend who did acupuncture, And I said, please come to my barn, do acupuncture on my pony. I'm not trained yet. I want to see how this works. And she agreed to do it. And she came. We had the pony standing in the middle of the aisle. She put the needles in the pony. And within a couple of minutes of getting the needles in, that pony's nose was dragging on the ground. She was sound asleep. She was the most relaxed I had ever seen her. And I said, okay, that's cool. How long do we stand here? And, like, how long does this cook? And she said, well, she'll tell us when she's done. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so we stood there and chit chatted for about 20 minutes. And all of a sudden, that pony's nose came flying up off the ground. The ears went forward. She did a whole body shake. Needles went flying everywhere. I led the pony out of the barn and her vision was back. She was walking around obstacles and seeing what was in front of her. And so that was really my first exposure to acupuncture in the animals. And I said, well, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. So clearly I need to learn how to do this. And so we had many episodes with that pony where it's like, oh, we need needles. Okay, great, good to go. But I love working on horses because that's pretty much the response that we get from them every time. They fall sound asleep. And when they're done cooking, they shake the needles out and they walk off very relaxed and happy. And we see that a lot with the dogs and the cats. And it's very cool because the horse can't lie. The horse can't verbally say to me, I can see or I can't see, but the horse going in the barn clearly couldn't see, and the horse coming out of the barn clearly could see. So we can get these immediate responses that are just kind of mind blowing.
I love that because when people say, "Oh, acupuncture is placebo, it doesn't really work," I'm like, "How do animals know it's placebo since they get better?" Animals will give you exactly the clue, like you said. You can't see, and now you can see, and the pony was like, "Woohoo! I'm free. This is great. I can see
Yeah.
again." So I
Yep.
love that. And one of my favorite animal is the dolphin. So when you talked about the dolphin and acupuncture in the tank, I can't even imagine. I would love to see this. That makes me so happy. You have no idea. So thank you for sharing that. That's great. Okay, so they have the same meridians and they have the same points. Obviously, you have to find where they're located because obviously, like you said, their legs, the difference in the limbs, the shortness or whatnot. When I finished school, I had a black and white cat. His name was Boo Boo. And just for fun, I wanted to see. I had never done acupuncture on any animals. So I just put do 20 on top of his head. And I thought he was going to like just take it off and try and then just kind of hiss at me or get mad or whatever. And so I just went, put do 20 on top of his head. And he looked at me and then his eyes kind of exactly like you said, he looked at me for a second. He kind of blinked, like what's happening? And then he kind of got dozy and dozy and then he fell asleep. And I was like, this is so cool. And I've done it on my previous dog for his hips. He was a lab. So obviously he was getting to be 15 and the hips, as you know. So I was doing it on the hips and he had arthritis. So I was doing it for that. And I was just kind of palpating because I have no idea what the meridians were. But I was like, I'm going to palpate. And if he's like, oh, I don't like that, this is where I'm going to put the needle, right? I'm just going to palpate for tenderness because I don't know. So I really appreciate you saying this. So my second question before we talk about food is how do you use Chinese medicine to diagnose a patient of yours? Like that patient has blood deficiency or yang deficiency, because the biggest part of our consultation is inquiry where people tell you the information, right? Obviously, the second biggest part for us is observation, which I know you obviously can use. So how does that work for you?
Same as people. We do tongue and pulse diagnosis. We, try and figure out their personality because that's always very helpful. But, when you've got damp heat, you've got damp heat. It's going to show up in very similar ways. And I'll give you a funny story on that. When I took my very first course in acupuncture, it was over a course of a year that we had to learn, but I had to keep going back and forth to Florida. So I was down in Florida and did the first section of acupuncture. So like really just learning yin and yang. And we had talked about tongue and pulse diagnosis and all this stuff. So I had a day before I had to fly home and I was still down there with some friends. And I was reading about different tongue diagnostics. And so I was like, hey, everybody stick out your tongue. Let me see what your tongues look like so I can, try to figure this thing out. And so I stuck out my tongue and somebody went, oh my God, your tongue is bright yellow. And so I'm flipping through the pages. I'm like, oh, that means I have a fever and I'm getting sick. I don't feel bad. I like this stuff is a bunch of hooey. I feel fine. The next day when I went to get on the plane, I had the flu so bad. I was literally crawling through the airport. They almost didn't let me get on the plane. They're like, "You're too sick to get on the plane." I'm like, "I'll stand up, I'll walk, I'll be fine. Just give me 5 minutes." I was so sick. And so from that point on, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is go look in the mirror. Am I getting sick? Am I okay?
Look at your tongue every day. Diagnosis has to be the hardest part of Chinese medicine. We always say there is no wrong treatment in TCM, only the wrong diagnosis. This is why I created my second book, Chinese Medicine Made Easy, to make it easy to grasp using a lot of colorful visuals. I have included all Chinese medicine foundation, yin yang fei, five elements, zong fu organ, all of it. All diagnosis, of course, including tongue and pulse, practice case studies to help you improve your skills, as well as give you access to my online fillable intake form to use with your own patients. You can download the digital version on any device, and it comes with many video links to complement it. Or if, like me, you like to read a real book, the hard copy ships all over the world. Before you invest in this book, you can download a sample of it to make sure that the format of the book is everything you were looking for, because I want to make sure that you are absolutely benefiting from it. Listen to what people have to say about my green book, Chinese Medicine Made Easy. The more I read, the more I like this book. It is simple to follow. All information is super organized with great pictures, makes memorizing a lot easier. This book will definitely make my learning a lot more productive. Yay! So happy to hear that. You've done it again. You are amazing. I wish we had your resources 20 years ago back in TCM school. This also makes my day, because this is why I do what I've been doing with AcuPro Academy for quite a few years now to support everyone. Check out the links in the show notes below, or go to my website, acuproacademy.com, and click the shop tab on the menu bar and get your copy today. So when you look at a dog's tongue, do you look also at, let's say it's paler than it's supposed to be? Do you look also at like the gums to see if they're as pale or as red as inflamed? Because I know most dogs, their bowel movement doesn't smell like roses, it's pretty stinky. But in TCM, as a diagnosis tool, we can ask patients when you go to the bathroom, okay, it's formed, but is it really smelly, right? Is it really sticky? Like you need a lot of toilet paper. How does that, for example, correlate when you look at animals?
Same way, same
Okay.
thing. I mean, it's a question. I've got an owner attached to the other end of the leash. So it's like, okay, does he have any mucus in his stool? Is there any blood in his stool? Is it loose? Is it formed? Is it hard? Is it dry? I can look at the tongue. The
Sure.
biggest problem with animals is you can't say, open your mouth and stick out your tongue. And you don't want to grab hold of the jaws and crank it open,
Sure.
because they will instantly suck it back. And then that changes the color, it changes the tone. So we have to be very stealth. Now, the good thing is on the side of their mouth, they have this little space where there's kind of no teeth between the incisors and the molars in the back. So we can just peek in the side and get a glimpse of what the side of the tongue is doing. So we can say it's thick, it's thin, it's got dimples in it, it's swollen, it's quivering, it's paler, redder, more lavender. And then at some point, we try to get them to open their mouth a little more naturally so we can get a better look, which is really funny because I also do online consultations for people, and I make them fill out this very long form that includes things like, what color is your dog's tongue? What does it describe your dog's tongue? I usually get pink, and I'm like, yeah, there's more than pink, folks. We gotta go a little further. But then when I talk to them in person, we can get a lot more questioning. And it's really funny because people are always trying to hold their dog up in front of the camera and open their mouth, which doesn't work very well. But so we look at things like the color and texture of their nose, the color and texture of their pads on their feet. What is their hair like? What is their skin like? Is it dry? Is it flaky? Is it greasy? Does their coat have a luster to it, or is it dull? So we're going to ask a lot of the same questions to get those answers that we need. Oh, he's got flaky skin. Are they big flakes or are they little flakes? So there's so much that we can ask. Are his eyes red at all? Do his ears feel cold, warm, or hot? It's a lot of the same questioning.
Oh, cool. Okay, so we have the diagnosis. We ask question, you right, to the pet parent, and then we can look at very similar things. When it comes to the pulse, let's say a cat, a dog, for example, do they have the same baseline for their heart rate as we do, or the baseline is different and you go from there to say, it's slow or it's rapid, for example?
So it's going to be different between different species. Birds have very fast heart rates, 300, 400. Cats are going to be 120, maybe a little higher. Dogs, depending on the size of the dog. Small dogs are going to have a higher heart rate than a large dog is going to. Our horses have a very slow heart rate. It's going to be about like 30. With our dogs and cats and small animals, we use inside the hind legs. And for horses, we usually use on their jaw, but it's going to be the same qualities. Is it round? Is it flat? Is it pulsing, choppy? So we use a lot of the same descriptors. It's just a matter of finding them. And for the small animals, I really like them standing comfortably and I'm reaching kind of inside their hind legs. It can be a little trickier if they're being really squirrely. Some of them don't like you having your hands there.
Yeah, I can see that. That is so, so cool. I love it. I think this is fantastic. I had no idea that it would be very similar, but it makes total sense. I totally get it. I have someone that follows me on Instagram. Her account is Red Equine. She does acupuncture on horses, same thing. And I've seen the big long needles that go specifically in the glutes area. I thought that's so cool. And they do a lot of electroacupuncture as well. So I've
Yeah.
seen that too, which I think is just fabulous to see. So once we looked at the acupuncture and we look at how you do a diagnosis, the second question before you figure out, okay, what food is best, how do you determine the element of the dog or the cat or the animal? And does it have anything to do at all with the species or the breed, for example?
We'll talk dogs for a sec. Kind of applies with horses too, but breed can definitely have an effect on which element they are and which personality they are. So, for instance, if we look at a lot of the working dogs, the German Shepherds, the Rottweilers, the Dobermans, the Malinois, the the black and tan dogs, dachshunds will fall into this. A lot of them are wood personalities. And, they're working dogs. They need to work. If they don't have a job, that liver cheese stagnation turns into frustration, anger, and not being very friendly. But those dogs are so good at those working jobs, being protection dogs, that sort of thing. So it makes it a little bit easier if I've got a Rottweiler standing in front of me and it's got red eyes and it's a little angry. It's like, pretty sure you're a wood personality with some liver cheese stagnation. We'll start here. So they can make it really easy. When I have the dogs that are hiding behind the owners, hiding under the bench that everybody's sitting on, they're not coming out of the corner for nothing and they're peeing while they're under there. Those are water animals. They're scared to death.
Yeah.
So sometimes they make it real easy to figure out their personalities. The red Irish setters who come in talking to everybody, they're fire dogs. They've got red hair and they're very active and they're talking. I've got 4 dogs right now. They're all spaniels, but one of my English toy spaniels is a redhead. And she talks at me at mealtime the whole time I'm making her food. So by the time I put in all the supplements and, zhuzh it up with all the stuff that I do, she's barking at me for a good 5 minutes. That's her fire personality. I just know that that's her element. That's her personality. So it's not a behavior problem for me. It's like, no, that's just who you are.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of nice when we get people to figure out who their animals are. It's easier to be accepting of what they're doing because you're like, well, that's their personality.
Yeah.
So figuring out their personality, again, it's a lot of questioning, but color has to do with it. Like yellow labs, golden retrievers, most of those are earth personalities. They're yellow. That color
Yeah.
goes with that. They're
And they want
happy.
love. Just
They
wanna
want
be
love.
seen.
They're
They wanna be
empaths.
oh
If
my
you're
god.
if you're having a fight with your spouse, they're gonna get in
Yes.
the middle and go, "No,
Yep.
no, it's fine. It's
Yes.
fine." So they can make it pretty easy for us. Breed definitely kind of plays into it. A lot of cats are metal personalities. They're very specific, especially the gray kitties. They're like, "No, this is the order that we do everything." But it's great because once I figure out their element, it's like, "Okay, well, now I kind of have an idea what I need to watch for with
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
This is where your strengths are going to be. This is where your weaknesses are going to be. Just like, me with my wood and metal, fighting it out all the time. I can look at that with the animals and I go, well, this is what we need to support. This is what we need to drain. And clients love it. Once you kind of give them the whole picture and the story, it's like, oh, that explains so much about why he likes this food and not that food, and why he does better with this food and not that food, and you know, why he hates it when I tell him to do whatever. So I like it because it just gives me so much more to work with.
That's so, so interesting. And so now that we've talked about this, let's look at the food. So we have the personality. I have a golden retriever. I would say he's half, he's got some fire in him and earth. He's very, loving and all this, but he has so much energy because he's a field golden. As you know, field
Nice.
golden have so much energy. So he's just, he goes and crazy and make us laugh a lot. So he's got some fire in him for sure. So let's say we figure out, I'm just taking an example, that this dog now is fire and earth, or maybe just pick one, earth or fire, pick an element. How do you decide what's the best food? Because, of course, dogs, for example, don't eat the same food as humans do, or they don't have the same proportion, I'll say, from, moist food to protein to carbs to all that kind of stuff, right? So how does that work for animals once you get their personality or their element?
I'm a huge proponent of human grade food for our pets.
Okay.
So there's no such thing as people food. There is such a thing as dog feed. We shouldn't call it dog food, the highly ultra processed stuff, because it's made to the standards of livestock feed. It is not made to the standards of human grade food. So there is a difference. So basically, I'm going to look at your dog and I'm going to say, okay, well, do we have any issues going on with the dog? Does your dog have digestive problems? Being an earth dog, a lot of them are
Mhm.
prone to having
Yeah,
some GI problems.
absolutely.
So, are we having GI problems? And that's our major issue that we're working on. And are those GI problems an excess or a deficiency? Just like you would do with people. I'll give you an example. I had a client, golden retriever person, and her older dog passed and she wanted to get a new one. So this is when I was in New Jersey, she found a fairly natural breeder in Texas. And she flew to Texas, got this beautiful puppy, brought it back. And he was very fiery just because he was young and
Sure.
energetic and all of that. But basically, he was an earth personality golden. And he's from Texas. So you're like, okay, he's from a hot environment. She brings him to New Jersey. It was summer, it's hot and humid. And this poor little guy had hot diarrhea every
Oh,
day. So
oh,
we've got these bloody mucoid stools. And from a traditional perspective, of course, here's your metronidazole, here's, all your drugs. And I said, we're not going that route with this guy. He's got a hot diarrhea. He's energetically very hot with his little fire going all the time right now. And it's hot and humid outside. So the poor guy, it's like we're just, burning him up. So I said, okay, let's just get a really cold herb. Let's put him on Coptis as his herb. And then we said, okay, for his diet, I think she was making her own. I said, we need cooling proteins. So we're going to go with protein. We're going to go with rabbit. We're going to go with cold water fish, duck, all these things that are going to be more cooling for him. A lot of puppy foods are lamb and rice. Well, that's
yes.
hot and hot. That
Yeah.
that would just be throwing paper on his fire. So I said, I need you to make this nice cooling diet for him. And so we made a balanced recipe for him. And I said, we're going to throw this cold herb at him. And at the beginning, he needed a Coptis capsule. I think we might have actually started him on two twice a day. I was like, we just got to cool this guy off. It worked beautifully. Within 24 hours, we're at normal stools with this dog. And so I said, okay, we don't want to make him too cold. So at some point we have to back off, especially when the weather starts to change. So the weather starts to change. I'm like, all right, we need to back off. And she had to back off very slowly. And even in the winter, for the first 2 years of his life, he needed one Coptis a day to keep him under control because he was just full of energy. And so that's what we have to do. We have to look at where is the excess or deficiency occurring. Let's address that. Now, then we can also say, well, he's earth. His earth is excess right now. So we don't want to strengthen that too much. Let's find things where we can pull back from that a little bit. So that's kind of how we do it. And if your dog is well balanced, so you might have a fire and earth dog who's not having GI issues, who's not having heart issues, who's not having a Shen disturbance. And you can say, okay, well, I need a nice balanced diet for this guy. So we need a little bit from the cold category, a little bit from the warm category. I'm a huge fan of like treats like. So one of the best foods for the earth dogs, since they have all these GI issues, is tripe, because tripe is the stomach of the ruminant. So a cow, sheep, deer, whatever. But you can't use the bleached tripe from the grocery store. You have to get the real stinky green tripe, which is just really stinky. But it works really well for supporting that particular element. That element likes yellow foods. Chicken
Yeah.
usually works well, but chicken is also a hot protein.
Mm.
So you've got to balance that. Do you have a dog who's too hot? Do you have a dog with hot symptoms? Do you have a dog with cold symptoms? So we kind of look at all the different energetics of the food, look at the energetics of the animal, and then match up what they need.
Yeah, and I could see adding if it's an earth element, but also digestive that's weak, then kind of like us, you could put mashed sweet potatoes in there and like just make it super easy. It's funny you say that because my golden is always hot. He's always hot. So he loves the winter. He loves the snow. I'm in Canada. So he loves the snow. He loves the winter. And in summer, he's got to swim. He's got to be in the water. He definitely runs more on the hot side. I think a lot of field golden are probably like that. It's kind of different from your cat. When I had my Labrador, I had a Labrador and a cat, and I always thought they are so funny, the two of them, because you could say they're yin and yang, but they both have a little bit of the opposite within. So my cat loves to be up at night while the dog sleeps at night, and vice versa. The cat sleeps during the day. The cat sleeps by the window where it's warm while the dog is looking for the cool side in the house, right? So they're very much yin and yang. However, it was very funny because my dog would not bark. He's not a growler. He's not aggressive. He's more yin in that way. But my cat was like someone comes at the door and he's like he's like a dog. He's growling, and I'm like, that's
Rock
your
cat.
yang side. Yeah, it was just like okay then. So it was fascinating to see that. So you're absolutely right. Pet parents know what their animals are like, if they're more fiery, if they're more, because they're observant and there's a communication with the pet. So we design a diet that is for the dog, and I assume like human we adapt as you did with the herbs. Once he gets cooler, then we can kind of slowly take some away and keep it if it's needed. My question to you is also, I'm not a vet, but I always have, I watch videos that says, okay, dogs cannot eat grapes and, different kind of food that they can't eat. That could be, or chocolate, for example, that could be very dangerous for them. And so how do we know that the herbs are going to be safe for them? Because I know food because you went to veterinarian school, and so you know what kind of food we shouldn't give animals. But how do we know about the herbs that are going to be okay for them and really work versus, well, it's like a chocolate or a grape, maybe it shouldn't be given, you know?
There are so many websites where you can look to see if certain plants are toxic for animals. I haven't really run across therapeutic herbals that I want to use that have potential for toxicity. Like lilies are very toxic for cats and dogs, but we don't use lilies in herbs. So, there's easy ways to look that up. All the herbs, the Chinese herbs that I use, almost all of mine come from a couple of companies that specialize in veterinary herbal formulas. So I've never run into an issue with that. We can run into issues where people who are not acupuncturists, pet owners, who say, "Oh, I heard Dr. Morgan say something about this particular like coptis, this herb. I'm just going to buy that online and give it to my dog because he had bloody diarrhea." No, we need a little more information before we start doling things out as with any medication. And really, we should ask questions before using herbs because we can have some interaction if your pet is on medications. Again, there are great websites that you can go to that will tell you this herb interacts with this drug. Just like if you're a human and you're prescribed a medication, a lot of medications can't be taken along with grapefruit juice. Well, it would be nice to know that. So, I would always say err on the side of caution and look that up and make sure that you're not going to have interactions. The biggest problem in veterinary medicine is that the number of holistic veterinarians is very small. The number of TCVM practitioners is growing thanks to Chi University down in Florida. It's growing pretty rapidly. But not everybody is familiar with all the interactions between medications and herbs. And particularly, like if you have a dog with heart disease and you go to the cardiologist and you say, "Oh, well, I want to use hawthorn to help with his blood pressure and his heart function," the cardiologist is their head's going to spin and they're going to have a heart attack right in front of you, going, "Oh my gosh, you can't." And
Yeah.
yeah, you can, but so don't ask your traditional folks about the herbs because they don't know. They haven't studied them. They don't know. And herbology is not my number one field. So, frankly, I have to look them up most of the time. I have to make sure that I am not combining things that I shouldn't or adding something with medication that's on board. Or if I have an animal who's got elevated liver enzymes or decreased liver function, we need to look at how's this going to interact. Is this going to be a problem? We always want to take the safe route. And for animals that are placed on Chinese herbs, I don't know if you do this with people too, but we usually say, okay, we're going to start with like a quarter dose and we're going to work our way up. I never had issues in my practice with an animal having GI upset. That's why we tell you to start slow so
Yeah.
they can get used to it. I never had an animal have GI upset with the herbs. I had patients that the wrong herb was prescribed. I had a new graduate join my practice and she had taken the acupuncture course. She hadn't studied all the herbs yet. We had a dog that came in that we had been doing chiropractic and acupuncture, old dog, very weak in the back end. And she prescribed an herb for the dog called hindquarter weakness. And after being on the herb for about 2 weeks, the dog was down and could not get up.
Oh, wow.
Well, the hindquarter weakness is for hot dogs. It's for yin deficient dogs. This happened to be a cold dog.
Right.
I
Right.
said, "Oh, well, there we go. We know the herb worked because it made him worse."
Yep.
You took a cold dog and you just made him colder.
Colder. Yeah.
So, when she came to see me, she said, something's not right here. And I said, oopsie, we're just going to change out that herb and, put the dog on a warming herb. And within a week, the dog's back up and moving around and doing really well. So, yeah, we can make mistakes, not get down to the nitty gritty. And sometimes we'll try an herbal formula like dogs with incontinence. Oh my gosh. There's so many different formulas that we can use for dogs with incontinence. And one of my best friends who owns a dog hospice, her old shepherd just had horrible incontinence. I think we went through 7 herbs before we finally found the one that was the right one for her dog. We just had to keep tweaking and keep tweaking and keep tweaking and finally got it right. But sometimes we're not exactly where we need to be on the first choice. So,
Before we continue with today's episode, I want to share something that honestly feels like a big moment for me. If you've been following me for a while, you know I've always said no to all sponsorships. I've been approached many times, but I turn them all down because if I don't genuinely use a product or love it, I will never recommend it to you. But today is different. I am super excited to introduce my very first sponsor. Drum roll, please. Jane App. I'm also a Jane ambassador, so this is a company I actually use and love. I am saying yes because I've used Jane for years in my own multidisciplinary clinic. Truly, it's the best practice management software and electronic medical record I've ever worked with. Before Jane, we were using a clunky system that made everything harder than it needed to be. When we switched, the entire clinic felt the difference immediately. Jane is built by people who actually understand what it's like to be a practitioner running a busy practice. One of my favorite features is online booking. There is nothing better than waking up and seeing patients booking their own appointment while I was asleep. Your patients can book when it works for them, and the waitlist feature fills last minute cancellations automatically. I love that. I used to spend so much time calling 8 to 10 people just to fill up one spot. Jane also automates the things we never enjoy doing, like intake forms, reminders, confirmation. It honestly feels like having an extra assistant handling all the moving parts so you can focus on what really matters, which is supporting your patients and being the TCM rockstar practitioner you truly are. There are so many features I could talk about, but we would be here all day. If you're looking for a system that brings more ease, more clarity, and calm into your practice, I truly recommend Jane. You can check it out at jane.app/demo. And because you're part of the AcuPro community, you can use my code AcuPro1MO, 1 month, when you sign up to get a 1 month grace period on your new account. The link and the code are also in the show notes below for you. Now, let's get back to today's episode. And it's the same for practitioners that are treating human. It's the same thing, right? Sometimes it's like we're missing some element and we think, oh, this is the best. And it's not happening as fast as we want, or as, so we have to reevaluate. I think herbs are much harder, obviously, than acupuncture because there is so much more to it with also interaction with medicine. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it's always important that instead of Googling, you go see a practitioner that has the knowledge. That's always safer for human and for pets, obviously. And then the other thing is, okay, so you keep mentioning herbs. Do you use formulas already? Or because for human, as practitioners, it's mostly formulas more than just single herbs. So do you use mostly formulas or it's half and half? How does that work?
Mostly formulas, some single herbs. One of my little dogs had bladder cancer, and he had a couple single herbs and he had a couple of combination herbs. Each case is going to be an individual, and sometimes you can't find, I'm not going to have an herbal apothecary and be mixing and playing with powders. This is not me. So sometimes I can't find the exact thing that I want with everything in it. So it's like, okay, well, I'll pick one from column A and one from column B.
Yeah, I totally could understand that. So this is so cool. I'm so excited you're doing all this. We'll have all the links to everything below, including where people can go and take the quiz online for their pet and for themselves as well. I want to take it for my dog because I think I kind of know, but I'm not really sure. And then, so once they took the test, obviously, this is when the diet and the supplement and all that comes in. So my last question for you, because I want to be mindful of your time. When you were in practice and you tell the patient, okay, this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to prescribe supplements, food, etc. What is the reaction of people wanting to go that route versus, oh, just take a pill and it's easy and I don't have to cook food and make food and, be putting, I guess, some homework. Most people love their animals and they will take the time, but not everybody wants to do that, right? So how did you navigate this?
It was really interesting. I used to do a lot more online consultations, and I had an older woman in California. And so I was figuring out what was going on with her dog. And I said, okay, well, this is what we need to feed the dog. And she said, oh, I don't know how to turn on my oven. And
That's
I
awesome.
said, well, your dog likes chicken. So what are you eating? Well, I eat TV dinners. And I went, oh, okay. She was, I guess I could have my neighbor come over and teach me how to turn on the oven. I said, no, I don't want you burning down your house. I will find TV dinners for your dog. And there are enough companies now that make pre-made meals. And we could just say, okay, I need this protein. I need this. I need this. And she had them shipped to her house and she could microwave them, which made her very happy. So I was like, not perfect, but I didn't want her burning down her house. For the clients who came to my clinic, 90% of them were willing to make the animals food. I was actually a little bit shocked. And that was actually why I wrote my cookbooks for the dogs with the recipes, because I was spending so much time typing out recipes for people in my office and handing them to them. And then finally, I just said, here, this page on the book, it was, okay, you can use this diet, and this diet in rotation. This is what we need to support your dog. And then we're going to go back in 3 months and look at your dog and reevaluate, see what we fix, see what we need to change with the diet. So the books made it a lot easier for me. It made things move a lot faster. And for people who didn't want to buy the book, I could at least photocopy the pages for them. So most of them were very good. My practices became known for being integrative and holistic.
Right.
Every once in a while, somebody would walk in the door with, there's a toenail problem that we see in dogs that's literally a blood deficiency. And it's very painful. Their nails fall off. They get very dry and brittle and they fall off and the dogs can't walk and it's very painful. There are traditional ways to treat it, but all you're doing is treating the symptoms and taking away the pain, but you're not fixing the problem. And from a Chinese medicine standpoint, with food and herbs, I can fix that.
Mhm.
And somebody came in and said, "No, I just want some pills." And I said, "But that's not going to solve the problem. You're just going to be fighting this uphill battle. I can solve the problem if you'll let me." No, I just want the pills. And I'm like, I think you're in the wrong practice. Like, you could have gone up the street for that. But it was very, very few. Most people really wanted to solve the problem. I had a great case. A 7-year-old plot hound was given metronidazole for chronic diarrhea and GI problems. And the dog had a really weird reaction and it developed aplastic anemia. So the bone marrow just quit making red blood cells. They went to the university vet hospital that over the course of a few weeks, the dog was on very high doses of immune suppressants and had multiple blood transfusions. The dog did not respond at all. Zero response. And the university said, there's nothing more we can do. We've got nothing else available. We've tried everything. The dog's just going to die. So the woman came to me and I was like, well, that's a tough one. I don't know if I can fix that or not. I said, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Yeah.
So I put the dog on blood tonic herbs. I did acupuncture with all my blood tonic points. I made a diet for the dog. And within 2 weeks, the dog was making red blood cells. And the dog lived to be 15 and died of something totally unrelated and never had another issue.
Oh.
But we also said, and this dog will never be given any more medications of any kind, no more vaccinations of any kind. It's got to eat, homemade whole foods. And the dog did great. And the people were so ecstatic because they had a death sentence with no hope. And I said, I'm willing to try. I don't know. So that's the power. That's how powerful this is. And like my little dog that had the bladder cancer, he was diagnosed when he was 15. He had 5 tumors in his bladder. And I tweaked his diet. He was already on a good diet, but I tweaked his diet a little bit and put him on my herbal formula and tons of mushrooms and all the stuff that I do. And he died at 17. He only
Oh.
had 3 tumors in his bladder when he died, and he didn't die from his cancer in his bladder. I didn't make the cancer go away, but I didn't allow it to take over, and he just had a really high quality of life, and that's what we want. When I fight cancers, I tell the people, look, you're going to think I'm weird, but you're going to go home and you're going to have a conversation with your dog and with the cancer, and you're going to tell the cancer, look, I don't need to kill you, but you can't kill him. And that's the attitude that you have to have of, okay, I mean, we're all living with cancer cells inside of us. Does that mean we all should be getting radiation and chemo every day? No. We should be supporting the good guys and making it not so comfortable for the bad guys. And we can do a lot of that with natural therapies. So cool stuff. But so for people who didn't want to cook at all, I actually have designed what's called the Constitutions line, but there is a diet for each element for wood, fire, metal, earth, water, and they're kind of balanced to support and also drain each element to keep it in check. And so all those recipes are available on our website. It's also available already made by a company called All Provide in Georgia. I'm sorry, they only ship to the US though. But you can do that. And it's funny, we had a woman who did the pet personality thing, and her dog was a wood personality. So she bought the wood diet for the dog, thinking that would support the dog. And the dog got diarrhea. And she went back and did her personality thing again. She goes, oh, he's a wood excess. I needed the metal. And so then she got the metal diet and solved everything. So if you pick the wrong one, the worst you're going to get is a little, soft stools. And then you go, oops, reevaluate.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's like human with diet, right? It's just you have to kind of reassess and see what works and what mistake we made, right? A few years ago, I was in India and, everybody was worried that I would get diarrhea because, you go to a different country that your gut's not used to the food and everything else. So I was very good. I drank bottled water and I didn't have raw food. I was like, okay, I'm just going to be very good. But I was invited to speak there and teach 36 doctors about Chinese medicine. And they were all worried that I would get sick. So every day they would ask, are you okay? Is your bowel movement okay? Are you okay? And every day I would say, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Don't worry, don't worry. And 4 days into it, one person asked me that question again, and we had fun. We were talking about different things. And then I said, can I tell you something? And she goes, yeah. I said, okay, I don't understand, but it's the opposite. I'm constipated. And she goes, well, that's weird because usually when you people come over, you get diarrhea. And then she looks down and she goes, how many of this have you drank today? I'm like, oh, it's so good. The chai I had, it's so good. I had like 7 every day. She's like, Clara, what's in chai? And I'm like, I don't know, ginger. And I'm like, cardamom. Oh, nutmeg. Oh, it's all drying. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why I'm drying everything. And so I preempted the diarrhea, but I went the other way. So then I back off
Hey,
to
it
the
worked.
no, they worked. But I was like, okay, just she's like once a day. I'm like, but it's so good. Anyway, so I totally get what you're saying. I love this conversation, Dr. Morgan. I just think that's fabulous what you're doing. I really, really encourage people to go to the website for their animal and for themselves, check out what you can offer them and their pets. And, I feel like with my last question that I had for you, that people are going to put more effort in cooking for their animals than for themselves because I've had the same, I would say, compliancy issue where I tell people, can we do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of this? And it's an effort for them to do. But if it was for the animal, and I speak for myself, if it's more for my baby, of course I'm going to do it, right? So it's interesting. So you might get more compliancy than us human practitioners.
Maybe. I mean, people do drift. You get recipe drift and they want to do it easy. But I had a client, they had a dog with cancer. We worked through that for a couple of years and then the dog finally passed. And then I didn't see them for a long time. And about a year later, they got a new puppy. And she came in and I'm like, I recognize this name, but I don't recognize the person. And obviously, it's a new dog. And so we go through the whole puppy thing. And at the end of the visit, she says, you don't remember me. And I'm like, I know your name and you look familiar, but man, I'm not placing this. And she pulls a picture out of her wallet and she said, you taught me that I had to cook for my dog and that I had to give my dog healthy food. And so my husband and I decided if we were doing this for the dog, we should also do this for ourselves. They went from eating all fast food to making really healthy meals based on food therapy. And between the two of them, they lost almost 200 pounds. And so she showed me the picture of them from when they got married and then the picture of them now. And I said, oh, I recognize the person in the old picture. Now I know who you are. But it was so powerful. The changes they saw in their dog, they decided that was cool enough that they should apply that to themselves. So, how cool is that? So, for anybody who's listening and you need to apply these principles to your eating habits, you really should because it really does help.
Oh my God, that's such a great story. The ripple effect of what you did went and affected them as well. That's such a cool story.
I
So
had
many
another client
stories.
who took cooking lessons because she didn't know how to cook. She said, I don't know how to cook, but I need to cook for my dog. So she took cooking lessons and
Yeah.
she ended up cooking for her dad lived with her. So she totally changed his diet. And then, she ended up getting married a few years later and she was like, well, I know how to cook. This is great.
You could write a book on all the reasons why people should get a pet because they always say, oh, it gets you outside, it gives you love. There's lots of good reasons. They make you laugh. They show you how to be in the moment, all this. But it should be also, they show you how to be more healthy and eat healthier. You should totally write a book on this. That would be so cool. Actually, I would love for you to write a book on all your stories because you're a very good storyteller. And I'm sure you have years of fun stories like you shared with us today. So we're going to land the plane on this. Is there any final word you would like to share with my audience before we part today?
So for those in Canada, my books are available on Amazon. For those in the US, if you want to order any of my books on our website, Naturally Healthy Pets, we'll give you 50% off of my books with the code AcuPro50. So sorry, Canada, we have a really hard time shipping to Canada. The Customs and Border Patrol is really difficult.
No, totally get it. And I have a lot of people that are listening from the UK and Australia and New Zealand and all over Europe and, all over North America. So we've got a wide range of people as well. I think it's great if people can go on Amazon from their country, but I would love for people to go on your website and take the test.
And there's just tons of information, tons of blogs. And I have a couple of courses on TCVM food therapy, making diets. figuring out the personalities, how they all interact. So if anybody's looking to do more work with animals in your practice, that'd be a great starting place.
That's awesome. And we'll have the link for the people in the US with the promo code that you gracefully give my audience so they can go and try it out. So thank you so much, Dr. Morgan. That was so enlightening. You're such a delightful guest. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I truly hope you benefited from this episode, and I would love for you to share it with a friend that may benefit from it as well. Follow the show, leave a review, and if you want more, go to my website, acuproacademy.com. I have tons of resources there with treatment protocols, case studies, free courses, and so much more. And connect with me on all social media at AcuPro Academy. I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Pinterest, and LinkedIn and TikTok. And no matter what, keep rocking it using TCM. Please listen to the disclaimer, because the AcuPro Show podcast and material shared through AcuPro Academy, which is a subdivision of Natural Health Sense Incorporated, are designed solely for educational and entertainment purposes. The utilization of information from this podcast or any associated material is at the user's discretion and risk. This content is not meant to replace the guidance of an acupuncturist, Chinese medicine doctor, medical doctor, physician, or any qualified professional, nor is it a substitute for proper diagnosis or treatment. Users are strongly advised not to ignore or postpone seeking medical advice for any existing medical condition with their healthcare professional regarding any health concerns.